Good morning. It is 9:45 a.m. here on Thursday, the 2nd of September 2021. Sorry, losing track of which day is which here in lockdown. My name is Arran Hunt. I am a partner at the law firm Stace Hammond, and I head up the immigration team there. As always, this is not legal advice. It's just our commentary on immigration in New Zealand. If you're looking for legal advice, please get in contact with us. It has been a few strange weeks here in New Zealand, and Auckland remains in level 4 lockdown. And it is a lockdown that, by and large, the population of New Zealand is actually supportive of, at 85% who are supporting the government on this lockdown. Experts here in New Zealand are still confident that we can eliminate Delta from being in the wild in New Zealand. To do that, Auckland is looking at having at least another 3 more weeks in lockdown. We've had 2 weeks so far. The next 2 weeks will be what we stay, as we call, as level 4, which we think is probably the hardest lockdown in the Western world. Then we'll have level 3. Level 3 we generally refer to as level 4 with takeaways. Now, south of Auckland went into level 3 2 days ago, seeing record lines at McDonald's drive-thrus. People want to get a bit of a fast food fix. And for me, I'm looking forward to going and buying a coffee in a few weeks' time. We'll get straight to the point, is that there hasn't really been much happening when it comes to visas here in New Zealand, and we don't expect much to take place with lockdown in place. We are still expecting something to do with skilled migrant at some point. That's still sort of dragging on, but there's been no real sort of need to put a video out to sort of update you on what's going on, because there has been no movement on visas in the last few weeks. There was a few articles in the media yesterday about the skilled migrant changes leaks that we covered a few weeks ago, that seems to have hit the mainstream media a few weeks later. Other than that, there really has been nothing going on here. What we're talking about today, though, is sort of a review for those of you who are offshore or have family offshore and looking at bringing them in, looking at managed isolation and quarantine, MIQ, what it means, and where it's actually recently had big changes announced yesterday around MIQ. But we're going to start first with a little bit of background. Now, this has been a mess for some time, as the number of applications that MIQ has been getting has swamped the number of rooms available, and it has since they brought MIQ sort of pre-registration in. Now, if they haven't actually have done that, we would have been in a bigger mess, I suppose, because we have people flying to the country without a room being available. But when they brought in the MIQ reservation systems about a year ago, it has been booked out in advance since that point, and it's getting more and more under pressure. Now, when the bubble with Australia opened a few months ago, the number of rooms was actually reduced. The number of rooms available for MIQ was reduced, and they changed how it was done so that you would have what they're called cohorts. So they wouldn't keep adding to a hotel with more people, so that you have an overlap of rooms or overlap of people staying there. Basically done in a full hotel, 2 weeks later, clear it out, clean it, next ones come in. And that reduced the number of rooms that were available as well going to that system. But that system was brought into place to try to prevent the virus from spreading between different groups of travellers. What it means, though, is that with that and the reduction of rooms, when the Australia bubble created, we have less and less rooms available for MIQ travellers. Now, those rooms that were taken away for Australia when the Australia bubble started, they're being used and they'll put aside for if we ever actually got viruses coming across the border from Australia, and well, we did. And that's what the situation is we are in now. And those rooms are now being used for those who have caught COVID-19 from the current spread. Now, for everybody else, it is a mad dash to try and book an MIQ spot that matches your date of your flight into New Zealand. Now, as future months were released, all of those available rooms were typically grabbed within a day or so of being released. We'd see sort of a month get released for bookings, and within a day or two, that month was full. And they kept on pushing it out more and more to the future, and those rooms kept on getting booked just as fast. At that point, it really did become a game of luck. Now, as people would cancel the MIQ bookings, or that MIQ staff would cancel bookings when they found people that had more than one room booked, naughty of them to do that, those days or those slots would appear. An old friend of mine actually set up a Twitter bot that would tweet every time a slot had appeared. It would constantly check the site and say, hey, there's a new slot appeared here in the last minute. And people would then have to quickly beat others to book a flight and then grab the slot, or perhaps grab the slot and hope there was a flight available on that day. We've heard of partners actually taking shifts through the night. They take turns being awake, constantly watching the system, looking for days appearing so they can get a booking in place, and they will try this for weeks on end. However, it wasn't actually even then a clean playing field. The Prime Minister was actually asked about this in mid-July about the automation of this process. We're going to look at that video now.
Have you seen reports of
Better get to Linton.
The MIQ booking system being, I guess, exploited by people who can use computer programs to essentially book the spaces for people, and then they pay the people wanting the spaces, pay the people who use the computer programs? And what do you make of that?
It is, we see no evidence that bots are able to actually make the bookings, and in fact,
no, but it's people doing it.
Yeah, but you cannot automate the booking process. The individual still needs to go on and make the booking themselves, provide their details, and physically be a part of the booking process. We've put in place processes to stop any automated way of being able to make that booking. Of course, I would say though, for everyone who's currently trying to come into New Zealand, we are in a congested period, whereas only a few months ago we had spaces. We keep imploring New Zealanders, keep an eye out for those times where we have a reduced demand to come into New Zealand, but we've brought in 150,000, 4 times the amount per capita that Australia is now starting to bring in their facilities. But there are limits to what we're able to do.
So you don't think it's being exploited?
Oh, well, look, I think I would encourage people to just, access that booking system in a way that's fair, but we have put in protections to try and stop people gaming it in any way.
Now, however, that wasn't quite true, and actually it wasn't even partly true. Any website can be easily automated, and despite the PM's advisors maybe telling her that wasn't possible, here it really was. The MIQ booking services had popped up, and some were charging thousands of dollars to book MIQ slots for someone. It had become a situation where the wealthy could get slots, as the booking process was so easy to automate. And for the rest of everybody else, well, it was tough luck, fingers crossed, hopefully you'll get a slot. Of course, doing this was a breach of the system terms. People weren't permitted to pass their login details to a third party. The MIQ staff did spot some of these bookings made by bots and then proceeded to cancel them. As with all things, once you admit a problem exists, it's easier to solve. So lucky they went from the whole idea of, no, it can't be done, to, wow, it is being done. How can we sort of combat against this? And with bots, they actually are relatively easy to spot due to the way they have been programmed to act. And that is to act quickly. The MIQ systems will likely log enough information to be able to tell when an applicant is completing pages within a fraction of a second, or perhaps where applications are being made for different people from the same IP address at the same time, or very, very quickly together. Now, there are ways around these sort of detection measures, but by doing so, that actually removed the speed advantage that bots used. Bots were good for people to book through because they were done so very quickly before a human could actually act that quickly. But it was still a way that they could do this, and it was very easy to automate. However, there were other ways that people were trying different approaches. Now, it actually came out in the media just today that New Zealand Trade and Enterprise, which is a government agency, had hired students to handle MIQ applications for staff trying to get into the country. Now, it was running this as a 4-week pilot where it had 3 students that had employed to sit there and try to grab MIQ spots. Now, a spokesperson has come out and said that, and this is the quote from them, "We have reviewed the pilot, sought feedback from a range of partners, and decided to close it." They didn't seem to bother reading the terms and conditions on the MIQ page that actually states that you cannot do this. It has confirmed that no spots were actually secured for staff. So this process, it gave 3 students 4 weeks of wage. Good on those students, make a bit extra money, but it didn't actually even wasn't successful for NZTE. Now, the reason for it not being successful is the timing. Now, several weeks ago, as New Zealand entered lockdown, it was decided that MIQ slots would not be released for a few weeks. Well, the government looked at the impact of Delta in the community. And that leads us to where we are now. So for those few weeks that they had these students working on this, there was no slots for them to get. So it was admittedly poor timing, but as I said, good on the students to make some extra money. Now, the Honourable Chris Hipkins, Minister for the COVID-19 response, has stated that a new MIQ system was being brought in. and we'll play a bit of that announcement now. This was just in the past day or two.
When we do release the next range of vouchers, and I hope to have more to say on that in the next week or two, people will note that the booking system will operate differently to the way that it has operated previously. When we release large numbers of vouchers, large room releases, we will be foreshadowing that in advance of the vouchers being released, and we will be introducing a virtual lobby booking system. The lobby is a virtual queue. It will mean that people can be selected from the queue randomly, removing the need for people to be the fastest person to hit the button. It will not fix the overall issue of supply and demand. We still have more demand than we have supply available, and in periods of high demand, it is still going to be the case that we won't have rooms for everybody that wants to come home. But this change will make bookings more transparent and easier for people, and it will create a more level playing field for people once they're on the website. Once all the rooms have been taken, the lobby will be closed, and anybody in the queue will be informed that they have unfortunately missed out this time. We will then continue to announce large room releases so that people will know when to come back, and we will look to use the virtual lobby again, taking on board any lessons that we have to learn from the first use of the lobby, which will be the next significant booking release. And I hope to have more to say on the timing of that release as soon as I can, but as I've indicated, there won't be any vouchers released in the next week or two.
So from that, we can tell that future releases will be announced in advance. Currently, it has basically been the month, or the release comes online and people just sort of quickly get your friends a phone call and get in there and try and book a slot. They're going to instead announce it in advance so everybody knows they're going up. People will then be able to submit an application to try and get a date. And they'll do so by joining a virtual lobby, is how the minister describes it. They'll basically all virtually be there waiting for their slot. And then the system will select those people randomly and grant them a slot. It's not clear whether you'll sort of allocate one day or multiple days. That could be okay. Whether you'll do it in conjunction with an airline, whether you'll do it before or after you book flights. I imagine it'd be before you book flights, because you book flights without knowing you've got MIQ. It still needs some more detail there, but it will remove the advantage for those who use bots or are willing to pay someone for that service. It removes that advantage and does create more of an even playfield. Now, once the rooms are allocated, those who weren't successful will be told that, sorry, you weren't successful, better luck next time. It isn't clear again on how it will handle rooms that may be freed up between draws. So say if someone changes their travel plans and that room now becomes available, how they're going to allocate that to, I suppose, an empty lobby. So perhaps there'll be an allowance to still be in the lobby after that, or well, we'll see once we have the details. The minister did talk about doing it once and then learning from that experience for future draws. Now, additional to this, they are putting in place 2 new facilities for those who have COVID-19. At the moment, our figures are, we had sat on 73 yesterday. There were a few days in the 40s, although they were a weekend, which typically are lower numbers. We do expect those numbers to be coming down, but we are seeing that our current facilities, especially being Jet Park in Mangere, is becoming full. So they are bringing on 2 new facilities to handle those who do have the COVID-19 infection, or those who may be in close contact with them and are likely to get it, such as family members they live with. The Crown Plaza, which is the source of the current leak, is still not taking any new travellers after it was found to be the source of where the spread came from. And actually, I've been to the Crown Plaza. I was actually in there about the same time as the person who did spread, well, it's not their fault, but it was released by them. I had family who were in the MIQ, and I went down to see them, and it was a situation where we were a number of meters apart with multiple fences apart between us and like mesh screens, and we all had face masks on. It was what I would have thought a very safe environment, and looking at being in that environment, seeing where the screens are, they talked about in the media as to they went over a perspex screen and through a walkway. Now I've been in that walkway, and it just shows me how virulent this virus is and how cautious we need to be. This was not, I wouldn't have looked at that environment and gone, wow, this is a risk. It looked like a very safe and secure environment, but it just shows you how incredibly dangerous this virus is. So yeah, the Crown Plaza, they are working on that. We'll see those areas even more blocked off. There is actually a vaccination centre on the same floor as the Crown Plaza entrance. So we might see changes to how you enter that. Perhaps you go through the what they call the atrium entrance rather than through the Albert Street entrance. But we'll see with changes there. At some point, Crown Plaza should come back into play, and that will add to the MIQ numbers. And that is it for today. Really just an update on MIQ and information about how MIQ works currently and how it's going to work in the future. There hasn't been any other movement on any other visa types. We are hoping for some movement at some point, but lockdown generally does give the minister sort of an excuse to not release much more information, particularly around things like skilled migrant, which we are now many months overdue on that announcement from March. We're also due the announcement from July as to the skilled migrant numbers, which that is now passed, and August passed as well. We will come back to you if there's any information on either of those or on any other visa or immigration change that we do see here in New Zealand. Until then, kia kaha, stay safe.